All right. Karen, welcome to Disembodied Podcast. It's great to have you.
Oh, thank you. Pleasure to be here. Thanks for inviting me, Evie.
Yeah, I'm very happy to meet you, and I'd love to hear about the safaris you take people on. That's kind of interesting. I don't know that we've talked about spiritual retreats and stuff that people do, but not so much safaris. So that's kind of exciting. And I know you're into animal communication as well. So
Yeah.
that always excites me.
Yeah.
First of all, maybe a little background. How did you come across, well, what is your current spiritual path and how did you come across it?
It's developing. It's a lifetime work in progress, right? I was raised Catholic and I didn't question anything, but also didn't go to church after I graduated high school and moved out of the house. And then when I had children, I started questioning things and wondering what was right, and also wanted to get my kids into a community, some kind of religious or not religious, but a foundational community just to help me support them and help them grow. And I tried a lot of churches, never found something that really resonated with me. And then, sorry, after my kids were in high school, probably, my brother told me about his church. And I went to his church and it just felt like home. It felt like, yes, that's what I'm searching for. And so I started taking classes, I started reading books, I started, going to the services, and they talk a lot about it. It was Centers for Spiritual Living, and they talk about all paths to God, not one religion, but
Mm.
different paths that resonate with different people, and all are good. What works for you. But things really started happening when I started doing my own spiritual practice every day and started dedicating to it. And so now that's part of what I do with the safaris. And, I don't want to get too deep into anything yet until I know which direction we're going. But I believe that we're all connected. Everything, the trees, the land, the animals, us, and realizing that and living in that helps create a balance in our lives, helps create harmony, and certainly makes things feel better, feel okay, like come to life at a different level instead of full of despair, perhaps,
Yeah.
kind of from knowing things are going to be okay.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of people are becoming more aware of like how plants and animals are impacted. And I think it's probably because we're destroying them, to some extent.
Yeah,
Maybe that's why it's dawning on us like, oh, maybe we should care about them since we're losing them. So I think it's a great revelation for humanity to wake up to, that they could do so much more to understand plants and animals and therefore make their own lives better and the lives of plants and animals better, right? It's
right.
mutual.
Yeah.
So, what are your practices? I usually save that kind of for later in the interview, but I'm curious, what are your spiritual practices?
Well, they have shifted. I will tell you what I'm doing now is not what I did 10 years ago or 5 years ago. I get up every morning. I drink a full glass of water, first of all, but then I sit down and I get into kind of a meditative prayer state. And it changes every morning. It might be 5 minutes, it might be 20 minutes. And then I will do a little bit of visualization, a little bit of talking to what I call my team. So I have it always feels a little bit embarrassing to talk about this, but I create teams depending on what my projects or what my goals are. So, for example, 6, 7 years ago, when I wanted to buy a house, I created a property acquisition team. And these are, of course, all spirit beings that are guiding me and telling me what to do. So I have conversations with whatever team I need to talk to in the morning, just to let me know. It's like, what should I do today? What's my next step? What should be guiding me, and what should I be looking for? Who should I be talking to? And I feel like some days it's nothing. So, no answer. So when people don't receive any answers, that's okay. Me too. And then some days it's like, talk to this person, and it's like, I don't know why, but okay. So I do it. And then I try to do a little bit of journaling, or I do a practice. I don't remember what the practice is called, but it's a writing practice, and it has to do with releasing past trauma. So I do that. And so I'm usually sitting in my chair. I call it the magic chair, where the magic happens. It's just a regular old chair in my living room. I'm usually there about an hour between all the different practices that I'm doing. And as I said, they might change from day to day. And then, some forgiveness practice, some gratitude practice. It varies.
How do you release trauma through writing? Because I'm interested in this because I was driving down the street the other day when it was raining, and I found myself getting increasingly anxious and freaked out because I felt like I was going to get into an accident. And I also felt it was irrational that I was assuming I would get into an accident, but it's because of trauma really from the past. On a rainy day some years back, I was rear-ended on a side street. I tried not to take the freeway because I thought I would get rear-ended there,
Oh,
and I got
oh,
rear-ended on a side street.
oh,
So
no.
I still have that fear in me, like I'm going to get in an accident, even if it's irrational, and even if there's like no other cars hardly on the road sometimes. So, how do you release something like that through writing?
So I follow something from someone, well, Anna Runkle is her name, the crappy childhood fairy. And and so she has this daily practice that I think she took from either AA or one of the programs, addiction programs, and I think it's AA. But we own everything as a fear or a resentment. So in your example, you might write down, I fear I'm going to be rear-ended today, something like that. So in the morning, you just release, I fear I'm going to lose all my money. I fear I'm not going to have any money to retire. I fear my husband doesn't love me, so anything. Or I am resentful at a person because I fear they don't like me, anything like that. And then at the end, I think one of the most important parts is then you turn it over to either your higher power, God, or to your higher self, depending on what resonates with you. And I just kind of tried it on a whim because I was like, okay, I'll give it a shot. Can't hurt anything. And I think it was about a week before the fears that had just been driving me for several months before they weren't fears anymore. So before they kind of healed. And I don't know that I know why it works or how it works, and I would encourage people to actually look up the actual method and how she says to do it. But it's been very helpful for me, very
Yeah.
healing.
Yeah, I interviewed a guy not too long ago who said that there's a certain prayer you can say to release fears because there's sort of a parasite thought form that
Mm,
infect your life. And we did, he did a prayer with me, but I still feel that I have that fear. And I think that he was saying you may feel for a long time you still have it because there's layers of fears,
yeah,
and you have to release the layers, one by one. It's not just one fear, it's like
r-
several fears
right,
bundled and
right.
entwined. So, I haven't worked on that enough, but I would like to try to not only say a prayer, but maybe write something down or do another practice, because I do feel like certain things, especially with driving, there's like it's hard where I live. I'm in Southern California. It's a very congested area traffic wise.
Yeah,
And,
yeah.
you can't go all your life and never be in an accident. It just isn't going to work out that way. So you have to, when you do have fender benders and different accidents, you have to kind of somehow find a way to release it. And I think I haven't
Mm,
totally done that yet. But
yeah.
so what do you meditate? I'm curious.
I do. That's usually the first thing I try to do when I sit down in the morning is meditate. And sometimes it takes me 10 minutes before I feel like I even clear my mind enough to just sit and pay attention to my body or my breathing without everything bombarding me.
Yeah.
But I do meditate, and it's, by the time I reach that point, sometimes it's 5 minutes, sometimes it's another 20 minutes. So, I don't do it for an hour a day or anything like that,
Yeah.
but I find a lot of value in it. I find a lot of information comes to me during that time.
I'm a little curious too about your spirit teams. Like, how did you get to the point where you trusted yourself that there are beings out there that are going to help you? And how do you have names for them? Do they kind of show up as people or something else? I'm kind of curious about that.
Good question. S- I'm trying to remember how they came to form. So I had read a book. I don't remember the name of the book, but it was by Mae McCarthy, and she talks about your chief spiritual officer, which is, a spirit form. And I had heard that other people have chief spiritual teams or something like that. I can't remember exactly. So I I must have heard about it somehow. And I don't recall where, but the process was for the house buying team, for example, is I just sat down during a meditative time. It probably wasn't in the morning. It was probably very intentional, later on during the day. And I said, okay, who do I need? I want to buy a house. And who do I need to buy this house? Because I was a single woman. I didn't make a lot of money. I had poor credit. There was just, everything under the sun was against me, or at least I thought, for buying a house. And so I just started writing down information I got. So, well, let's get a property manager. Let's get a financial person, a legal person, and I'm calling them persons, but they weren't really persons. So all these different team members, there were probably 8 or 9, and they were people not necessarily that I knew, but they looked like people to me, and I did give them names. Um, I my operations manager for when I was buying the house, I also wanted it to be an education facility. So I had an operations manager that was part of that. And if you were of the age that you had Johnny West and Jane West toys when you were young, they were Jane West in this aspect was my operations manager. So she was my took care of the property. And she literally looked like Jane West, which if you know them, if any of the listeners know, uh, she was blue. There were Barbie-sized toys, and she had a blue outfit on. So that's what I would see every morning when I talked to my team. That's what I would see, and several other characters. So other legal people that I knew, they might have been alive, they might be dead people, might not be real people. I might not have known who they were, but a name came to me, and so I just assigned them a name. So I kind of just assigned it. Now, it did take a while. You had asked about how I trusted myself. One day, the information I received was to call my friend, whose husband, so it was to call my friend. And it's like, I don't know why I'm going to call this. She's more of an acquaintance, but I'll call, but okay, maybe. Her husband was a home inspector. And I thought, well, I can kind of see that. I could use a home inspector while I'm looking for a house. So I
Yeah.
didn't call her right away. And I'd be driving to work, and I'd see his trucks on the road, and I'd see his business come up all over the place. And I thought, okay, I guess these are signs. I guess I'm going to give her a call. So I gave her a call, and it turned out her husband was now he still had the inspection business, but he was also a real estate agent.
Hmm.
So he was a perfect real estate agent for me because I needed a house that I didn't have to do a lot of work to, but also had to be very low priced. So I didn't always trust everything immediately, but it would get in my face until I did it.
Yeah, that's interesting. I feel like that's very practical somehow in a way that I wouldn't have stumbled upon that myself necessarily. I feel like I utilize spirit guides for such a, I don't know, like a bird's eye view of thing. I never
Right,
even thought to consult them on house buying, I mean,
right, right.
um, I'm
Yeah,
not really looking to buy a house anyway, but
yeah, but any
that's
other project you might have going on.
exactly right. If you want to buy a car or,
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
there are so many things that are practical and relevant to your well-being. And I mean, if you feel better owning a home, maybe long term that is a good solution for you. So
right.
spiritually speaking, sometimes you feel more grounded in a place where you have space around it. You can have a garden when you own a home. There are lots of aspects to that where I
Yeah,
understand why people want a
yeah,
home.
yeah. For me, it was important, I think, because I didn't think it was ever possible, and it just felt like it was what I needed to plant myself and do the things I wanted to do as far as business-wise or for my livelihood, I guess, things that I wanted to do that I was having. So, for example, I wanted to teach these animal communication classes, but it's hard to find a place to teach a class where you can bring animals in, and you want the animals to be comfortable and not disruptive. So I wanted to have my own place where the animals lived there so they're all comfortable and they wouldn't be disruptive during, our quiet meditative time, something like that. So,
Oh, I see. Okay. So when you teach classes, it's like hands-on with animal communication. You're not just theoretically giving people ideas about it.
right. No, we're doing it.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah.
So tell me, like, let's get into that a little bit. How do you set up the classes? Do you have is the first class kind of like introducing things without the animals and then you slowly bring them in? How do you do that?
Yeah, and I do want to say that animals don't necessarily have to be there. But I well, most of my appointments are with animals that are 500, 2,000 miles away. So we don't have to be in the same room as the animals. And of course, during the pandemic, any classes and appointments were all, virtual. So we weren't in the same room with the animals. Um, but yeah, the first part of a class is going to be just kind of explaining for the people that really need to understand how it happens is explaining how it happens to the best of my knowledge. Sometimes I'm in the middle of an appointment and I still feel like this is crazy. How am I doing this? So so I don't always can't tell you exactly how it happens. I can tell you in theory, but so that's the first part of a class, the first hour or two and answering questions about everything is energy and we can connect to energy and we're always feeling other energies. We don't always know it though. And so it's also a lesson in paying attention to ourselves and what we're receiving. And then to begin to trust. So this goes back to your question about trusting the information. I
Yeah.
think my animal communication skills grew at the same time exponentially with my spiritual practice.
Hmm.
Because as I trusted the information that was coming from the animals, I began to trust the information I was getting during my practices or from God, from the universe. And so I think they grew together. And that's what it is for people that are new to animal communication, or I also teach, other spiritual practice classes. It takes time, it takes practice to begin to trust that the information you are receiving is indeed, a message from the animals and not your imagination. We're so uh, told that you have such an active imagination, that kind of a thing. And
Right.
it's not always your imagination. A lot of information we get is not original information.
Yeah, when I think about communicating kind of with my birds and weird things that have come up with them, I have four little miniature parrots
No.
and they're super cute. And I remember when I got the last one that I acquired. He's kind of a cloud colored bird. He has gray and pale blue and white on him. He's so cute. And one time after I got him, I was trying to decide, like, what should I call him? Should I call him something silly like Cloud? And then I decided against that. And then I kind of looked over at him at one point, and it occurred to me that he looks like Gandalf.
Oh, really?
Gandalf with gray hair, because he had kind of like oops, he had like sort of like, I don't know, just when I looked at the back of his head, it was kind of like gray hair. And it was such a random, weird thing that came to me that it stuck. I called him Gandalf. I call him Gandhi. And I feel like maybe Gandalf came up to me as a name because he has a lesson to teach me or something. He has
Uh-huh.
some sort of magical lesson for me.
Uh-huh.
But that little monster bites me all the time. Like when I go to pick him up, if he's not in the mood, he'll nip at my fingernails.
Oh.
And so he's got kind of a temperament. He's young still, and birds can be very nippy sometimes when they're young, but he has sort of a like a low tolerance type message. And I'm thinking, okay, he's going to grow out of it somewhat, but I'm anxious to see how my relationship with Gandalf unfolds. Some of my other birds are a little more cuddly, and he's not so cuddly at this point. But and I've talked in other podcast episodes about how I got a message from my blue and gray bird Rumi that the other birds were picking on him. Stuff like
Mm-hmm.
that, has
Mm-hmm.
occurred to me, and I protect him because he is a little bit vulnerable. So safaris is kind of an extrapolation of pet communication. I
Yeah.
mean, when you communicate with pets that you're really comfortable with, they're in your environment, that kind of makes sense to me. But how do you communicate with animals that are wild, literally living in the wild, and
Right.
large predators, maybe, like
Yeah.
lions, and how do you communicate with them?
Yeah, it's different. The they don't have the same references as our pets do, so they don't go for rides in cars, they don't get treats, they don't, they don't know what's for dinner. So it's very different. And most of the time when I'm on a safari and I'm in a space where we are able to just sit and connect with, I mean, the world around us, whatever animals are around us. It's more about the uh, collective lessons in what the zebras or what the wildebeest or the lions might have for us. I do have, so I have, and some of my guests have connected with specific animals in the past. And more or less, it's like it's almost like I hate to say this, but it's almost like an oracle. So it's almost like they can ask them questions and receive, really the wisdom because they are always connected with their God. They're not ever separate from whatever their divine source is. And so they honor themselves and their connection by just doing what they're pulled to do, doing what they're told to do. Um, for example, the wildebeest. So we accidentally made it into the Great Migration. I thought we were going to be too late for it. We didn't plan to be in Kenya during the Great Migration of the wildebeest, but there we were. They were there. And the wildebeest were just like, here's your lesson is you need to honor what you're being pulled to do. So the words they used were pull as opposed to instinct or intuition, but it's kind of the same thing. It's like we're being pulled to go north at this time, or at that time it was actually south, but we're being pulled to do this. And we know everything's going to be okay once we get there.
Hmm.
We don't question it. We don't say, oh, I think I'd rather stay here because the grass is still green or because there is some water here. They move as, their instinct or their pull is telling them to do, knowing that that's what's going to take care of them. And so I think it's broader lessons for us that we can learn, but it's really the same techniques. We're still energy, their energy, and we can connect with energy. We can get into that same space and be very intentional about messages we want to ask or convey. And so real quick, I do have people, or I have had people that also want to tell animals, hey, this was more wildlife, backyard type wildlife, as opposed to savanna wildlife, but you might want to move on because there's builders coming and they're cutting down the woods, that kind of thing. So I do know people that also
Hmm.
connect because they feel like they have important messages to give the animals. So,
Well, do they tell the animals where to go?
I don't know if they tell them specifically where to go, but uh, we we I guess we speak or we communicate. We communicate more in energetic terms. So we're not going to tell them to go past Starbucks, down to the next woods, but we might energetically show them this space over here, over towards the right, go that way. So they do tell them, that much, go this way, go that way. And just to be safer. Sometimes
Right.
animals listen, just like a 2-year-old or just like a 20-year-old. Sometimes they listen, sometimes they don't.
Right.
Just because we tell them or we ask them something doesn't mean they're going to do what we say.
Well, I think bears could use some instruction.
Yeah. Yes, I agree. We have a lot around my house too, a lot of bears.
But
Yeah.
their desire to forage in trash cans is probably greater than their, receipt of that message, maybe. Who
Yeah.
knows?
Yeah.
um, excuse me. So how do you feel like when you take someone on a safari, and do you feel like most of the people can tune into the animal collective messages soon or not so quickly? Does it take days?
It can take days. I mean, some people just aren't really there yet. So I do take everyone that comes with me on safari is not automatically someone that wants to connect with the animals. So my safaris are getting a little more retreat-like every year. But right now, so like on my last safari, for example, probably half of them were already kind of in this spiritual space and able to connect with them easily. But some of them had never even thought of doing it before because they were a friend of a friend that was coming. So sometimes, when someone brings someone else along, they're not in the same thought space and
Yeah.
belief space. So that doesn't mean I won't work with them. Some of them just aren't interested in it though. So not everyone does, but the people that want to and try. So I also usually put together a journal of exercises to do like in the lodge in the hotel before we leave in the morning or when we come back at night, just to help set them up more, create intentions and just how to get into that space to make it easier.
Yeah, that's so interesting. That sounds like such a fun trip. I'm not really into going on a safari at this point. Maybe I will someday, but that is such a great idea because there's kind of to me, it almost seems like a voyeuristic side to safaris where you're just
Yeah.
looking
Yeah.
through binoculars at animals, just observing them all the time. And I think
Yeah.
that's one of the things that kind of bothered me. And also the fact that rhinos charge those little jeeps and all that stuff. That definitely bothers me.
Yeah, and that's what I don't like either is this voyeuristic thing. And that's why I feel like I'm not taking people on a ride to see animals. We're not just going on a drive and looking at animals. I actually, for for the benefit of the person and for the benefit of the animals, because I think if we connect with the animals and we see a different side of them, we will support them differently in the future. Or, I
Yeah,
mean, at least that's kind of my hope, that we realize that they are beings and they have needs and they deserve, their freedom and everything that a good life can afford them, just as we do. So,
right.
yeah.
So do you ever try to talk to the god of an animal group, like the god of the bison or wildebeest
Yeah.
or whatever?
I I do. I usually do that. I actually, for a while, was doing it as part of a series that I was publishing, Insights from the Animals, where I would talk to the god or the deva of the giraffes of Masai Mara, for example, just to see what kind of lessons they had for us, just to see what do they want us to know and you know, how can we benefit them? How can they benefit us? Is there something we can do for them? So absolutely. I think the god of the animals is very full of wisdom, full of information for us. That's really important as we try to live on this planet together. Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like I didn't really think about that so much before, but I think when I was meditating maybe a year or two ago, I got a message that I could talk to like the god of the birds if I wanted to know more
Oh,
about birds because I was new to them a couple years ago when I started getting them. And
okay.
so I've tried to, sometimes before I go to sleep, I'll ask a question to the god of birds, like, give me some insight here, on what to do in this situation or whatever.
That's
And
fantastic.
I feel like it doesn't come right away all the time, but it will come maybe the next day or another day later, something like that. Something will occur to me.
Yeah,
And yeah, I feel like any animals in your care, you should probably somehow get acquainted with their needs. And you can't always just like read about it online and get a full
right.
picture
Right.
because we don't know that much about some animals. It depends on how esoteric the animal is. I think we know quite a bit about dogs and cats. It seems to me like I've read a lot of studies on cats in recent years. They seem to be studying cats a lot, scientists. But I don't think that a lot of animals are like studied enough to really know. I think they're studying wildlife at times, and you have to kind of dig around and find research on them. But that only explains what the scientist will observe. It
Exactly.
doesn't explain
Right.
the rationale for why the animal's doing something weird or
Right.
something different from what they would normally do. So I mean, if you're spiritually inclined, I would say definitely, and you have pets, get to know the God of that class of animals.
Yeah, I'm really curious if you've just started taking on these birds recently, fairly recently. What led you to do that? What inspired that?
Well, for most of my life, I had cats. When I was a kid, I had cats, and I was never a dog person really because dogs bark a lot and it disrupts me. It makes me
Hmm.
nervous, I think, to always hear dogs barking.
Okay.
So I was always into quieter animals like cats, and I had a great affinity with cats since the time I was really young. And the last cat I had, she died in 2021. She had heart issues,
Mm,
and she was getting weaker and weaker, and I had to put her down, and it was very tragic to me.
yeah.
And after that, I thought, this is a great opportunity, really, to open myself up to a different type of animal
Oh,
because I've had cats so many years on and off. And I thought, why don't I just open myself up? Like, what would I be inclined to? And I considered like a chinchilla.
hmm,
I
hmm.
love chinchillas, but everybody tells me that chinchillas don't like to be petted, they don't like to be held. So it's kind of a tough um, gamble with that particular animal.
Oh,
Like, are you going to be able to, play with it, or are you
right,
just going to watch it
right,
from a
right.
distance? And I thought, I've always wondered what it's like to have a bird. So I got a couple of budgies, which are parakeets,
Yeah.
and I like the budgies, but I got ones that weren't really very tame and they were kind of hard to connect with. And then I got a parrot, which is what I currently have. I have four of them. And I could connect with her somehow more. I don't know
Mm,
what it was with that little bird, but I felt very connected to her. And I
okay.
got a lovebird as well. And she was not tame. That was another mistake. You need to get, sometimes, especially in the beginning, you need to get tame birds. Otherwise, you're
Right.
going to have a very tough time.
Right.
And they're not as inclined to humans as dogs and cats. So I learned my lessons kind of, and I found a really good home for the budgies. I found a lady who had lost her birds. She was ready to have new birds, so I ended up giving the budgies away because they were extremely squawky and loud. And for me, podcasting at the time from my apartment, it was damn near impossible.
Right.
I'd put them in
Right.
my bedroom and I could hear squawking on the recording, even though I was in another room. So I did find a really good home for them. I mean, the lady was so happy to get them, and it really was a great relief. And so I've stuck with the parrotlets, and it turned out my neighbor ended up taking the lovebird because he wanted a lovebird. So I have just parrotlets now. I got more parrotlets. And I guess, long story short here, I have kind of a connection to that specific species of bird. And I do feel like I still have a lot to learn, but I feel like for some reason I wanted to connect with animals that had wings. And
Oh,
I had been connected to cats, which are terrestrial animals, and I wanted to be connected to animals of the air element.
interesting.
Does that sound
Interesting.
ridiculous? Sounds ridiculous.
No, not at all.
Yeah.
You can learn what it's like to fly through. Are your birds allowed to fly?
Oh yeah, their wings
Okay.
are not
Okay.
clipped. They get to get
Okay.
out of the cage and fly around. And
Okay.
I learn kind of the hard way sometimes that wings can be a hindrance to them because they will sometimes get too close to the blinds and they'll get kind of caught up in the blinds and I have to remove
Oh,
them.
right.
So, wings have a crazy advantage over terrestrial animals like humans. Humans are walking, of course we can't fly. So they have this wonderful ability to fly, but they can get caught up in things.
Okay.
And so
Okay.
I've learned to kind of keep the blinds open in a way where the birds aren't going to get. I mean, they learn from experience, of course.
Yeah.
They're very smart
Yeah.
little birds. And the thing also about birds that people don't realize is they think, oh, it's got like a little pea brain. It's a dumb animal. Well, it may have a little pea-sized brain, but the thing is that brain has more connections than our brains that are bigger.
Yeah. Yeah.
Supposedly, they have a lot more connections, synapses, or whatever.
Yeah.
So those little animals are quite intelligent and capable of learning.
Wow. Wow. Yeah, that's amazing. I've seen some amazing birds, have talked with some as well, but I haven't had birds since I was a young child, and so I don't know a lot about them. So what you were saying though, it is a good idea to talk to their God to find out information. I mean, how much information are you going to find online about parrotlets? So,
Well, and there's conflicting information
mm,
online. When you look up like the care of any animal, sometimes there's conflicting opinions, like how to do this, how to feed it. That's always a concern. How do you feed an animal to where it likes what it's eating and it's also eating something healthy? And
right, right,
obviously, when you have birds at home, you're not going to have like soil with worms in it that they can
right.
go pick out a worm from, and you're not going to have insects that they can just randomly eat. So how do you supplement the protein? And
Yeah,
there's a lot of questions about stuff like that.
yeah, for sure. For sure.
So I feel like I'm kind of mastering it slowly, but it's good to, I really like relating with different animals, and I think that's sometimes why I'm curious about, maybe if I get a bigger place to live and I have a garden or something, maybe I get a bunny, or maybe I get then you have to kind of protect them though, because they get preyed upon by a lot of
Right.
critters,
They
even
do.
raccoons. Like I have friends that had chickens and, raccoons killed their chickens and now
Yeah.
they're afraid to have
Yeah.
chickens again. And
Yeah.
so if you have bunnies, chickens, certain animals just tend to get preyed upon a lot if you have them outside at all. And that's kind of the concern. I don't really want to have that experience.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's definitely every animal has its dangers. inside and outside. And some of them are prey animals, so they, what are they going to bring you, or what are they going to go after in your own yard? But
And it's
yeah,
tricky. I mean, I understand that other animals need to eat and that's why they prey upon them. It's not that I don't understand that, but it's just when they're your pets,
yeah,
it becomes more tragic. Like the level,
absolutely.
it's like they're your children and they're dying. And it seems needless because there's other animals outside of your yard that they could prey
Yeah,
upon, right?
yeah, yeah, I agree.
So
It
that's
is.
tricky.
Yeah.
So, other than safaris and animal communication, are you teaching people other skills?
Yeah, currently I actually have a class I'm teaching how to experience and live in oneness and connectedness, because I believe once we fully grasp our connection to not only the land, the animals, people, the divine, and our souls, that we can live a more balanced life. So I am actually currently teaching a class like that, a 6-week class, which I do occasionally. And I I love spiritual practice. So I always try to infuse everything with some kind of spiritual practice, because there are so many different ways to connect. And when I say spiritual practice, I mean connecting with our divine or our soul or our spirit, basically any way to let our spirit into our world to help us, So um writing, certain ways can be a spiritual practice. Certainly art or gardening or dancing. There's so many different ways that
Yeah.
we can make that connection. So I like to help people explore what's a good one for them. People that say I can't meditate. It's like, well, okay, then let's not meditate. Let's try something else, you know.
Right. Yeah,
Yeah.
you don't have to get so focused on doing one thing that you feel bad about it. I would always tell people that, like, if you're inclined to meditate, do it, but you got to take baby steps and you can't just go, I'm going to sit down today and meditate for an
Right.
hour. You'll
Right.
drive yourself crazy. I mean, don't even put yourself through it. Just say, I'm going to meditate for 5 minutes.
Yeah.
And then maybe a week from now, I'm going to meditate 10 minutes a day or something. You got to build up and
Yeah.
you have to have a comfort level with it. Sometimes you have to face your own inner issues that you're ignoring because most of us go through life at a very frantic or busy pace, working,
Mm-hmm.
maybe taking care of kids or other people. And there's sometimes feelings of hurt or woundedness that come up when you sit down to
Yeah.
meditate.
Yeah.
And that ends up interfering with your experience because then you think, well, gosh, every time I sit down to meditate, I start to feel bad about things that aren't going well. And you have to, I guess, reframe it. Maybe first of all, you have to learn to be at peace with intrusive thoughts and kind of, I was taught to kind of gently push them away
Mm-hmm.
instead of getting mad or frustrated, but just gently push them away. That's one good technique. But I think you just have to realize that not every meditation is going to be some blissful, euphoric experience as well.
Oh, right. Absolutely. I've had a couple euphoric ex experiences, but it's been years actually during a meditation.
Yeah, I mean, it's not all about pleasure. It's not all about having fun necessarily, but it is about gaining insight from your higher self, from God, whatever, however you want to frame it.
Yeah,
Because I think the word God can be disruptive to people.
it can be.
I
Yes.
don't know how you understand God. You seem to have an open concept, but do you define God at all?
I define God basically as the energy that connects us all. So I don't define God as a person like energy,
Mhm.
um, uh, something judging us. I could say love. Um, but really in my mind, when I say or think God, I just think of the connection that connects us all. So,
Yeah, I think love is a good, it's kind of a vague definition of God, but I subscribe to that as well. And also I think of it as like a creative and governing force.
mm,
And I think
mhm.
of it more as a force these days rather than a person. I don't like assigning pronouns to God like he or
Right.
even she.
Right.
I think God would probably transcend the whole gender concept.
I agree. Yeah.
Gender is about reproducing here on earth and stuff, and that's
Yeah.
great. But there's probably, if there's an overarching God, it's a God that is complete and doesn't really have to have a woman or a man
Right.
to make things, you know.
Right. I completely agree. Yeah. A combination of both and all and everything.
Yeah.
So, and when I say God too, not only do I feel like it's the connection of all us living on this earth, people and animals, but the ones that are not living, the ones that have lived before us, or spirit guides or angels, all that for me encompasses God, or God encompasses all.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a open-minded way to look at it. And I feel like, whenever you get too dogmatic with these things, you're calcifying your own way of understanding everything.
Mm-hmm.
I try not to be dogmatic about it. So
Mm-hmm.
I like is it the Center for Spiritual Living? Is that what you
Yes.
said?
Center for Spiritual Living.
Yeah.
Yes.
I
Yeah.
think that's probably like New Thought or
Yeah.
something like that, right?
It is.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
That's a great organization, probably, because we need to be encouraged to utilize the spiritual practices that have been utilized for thousands of years, but from different traditions, and not get caught up in just, I think in this day and age at least, don't get caught up in just following one certain path and then start to feel oppressed by it. Um, I feel like religion is an oppressive
Mm-hmm.
force sometimes, not
Mm-hmm.
always. I mean, I'm sure some people are quite happy with their religion, but I feel like it can be oppressive.
Yeah, I do too. And I think anything that any religion or, dogma that's trying to come between you and your God, that you have to use this person in order to get information, or anything that keeps you separate from, your divine. Um, well, it's not for me, I guess I should say that. Maybe it is for some people, as you said. Maybe that works for them, but it doesn't feel like the truth to me.
Right. Well, and when it's used to exclude others a lot, which it often is, that's where it becomes really problematic. And I don't understand sometimes how people live with so many rules, to be honest. When I think about Orthodox Jews, I see reels by a lady who's an Orthodox Jewish woman
Okay.
living in New York. Reels on Instagram is what I'm trying to say. And she explains all these complicated things that she has to do as a woman, when
Wow.
she's like, she was talking about when she gives birth to a child, her husband cannot be be in contact with her immediately because there's blood involved. And
Yeah.
there's just weird
Yeah.
shit like that,
Yeah.
and it
Yeah.
is so archaic to me to even think like that. And I wonder how people honestly function. She, as an Orthodox Jewish woman, when she has her period, she has to go to a place and stay out of the house. I mean, I forget what they call it, but I can't believe people live like this in this
Yeah.
day and age, that they choose to live in this very old fashioned system of
Right.
thinking where women are always being like shipped off somewhere, and
Yeah.
they're always kind of unwanted. And as a woman, I think, okay, I'm born here, I'm going to damn well do what I want to do. I'm not going to always be shipped off somewhere or told
Right.
that I can't be around. And I mean,
Right.
I don't understand it, but if some people are very comfortable with that thinking, maybe it's just where they are. And I wouldn't argue with her. I wouldn't try to convert her to my thinking
Right.
necessarily. I think
Right.
that would be fruitless
Yeah.
and it'd be a waste of my time. And I appreciate that she's bold enough to actually share these things because I think it's interesting.
Yeah.
But I mean, how do you process that? It's weird.
It is weird. And I've realized that it's so ingrained in them from such a young age, it's hard to break. I was just thinking this morning, this is not religion related, but before I was 12, when we had a big remodel at my house. Um, when I was standing at the kitchen sink, I would look up to the left to look at the clock. And then after 12, that was the last time the clock was there. Still today, when I bought this house, I have the same kind of kitchen sink and cupboard thing that I had in my childhood home. For the first 2 years, I looked up to find the clock to see what time it was. And I mean, 40 years later, whatever it was. So things that happen when we're young are just so set into us. It just these patterns that we don't even realize come up, and they do take layers to undo sometimes. So,
Yeah, I think guilt in particular is something that, like when you're raised with religion, there's often a lot of guilt
hmm
interlaced into conversations and
yeah,
behavior with family members. And that is a really hard thing to shake off in the long run. It takes years and years of work to kind of go, I'm not going to get into this again. I'm not going to get
right,
tangled up in somebody
right.
else's expectations of what I should be doing.
Yeah, right.
So, and I still have to, sometimes when I talk to relatives, I still have to kind of go, I'm going to extricate myself from this.
Yes, agreed, agreed.
Um,
Family is our source of a lot of learning lessons.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So do you officiate weddings and stuff like that as well, or?
I do. I love to do weddings because it's fun. The
Yeah.
couples are always fun. So I do weddings. I have not done memorials, although I certainly could do them. I've attended, it seems like many lately, and but not as a efficient. But and also house blessings and pet blessings, and
Oh,
I love doing pet blessings. That's a lot of fun.
oh, that's wonderful. So you're officially a reverend, right?
I am licensed well, I'm licensed in the state of Washington. So
Okay. Yeah, I just wanted to bring that up because I didn't really mention it earlier. But
yeah,
at any rate, Karen, I really appreciate you coming on and talking about all this stuff. This is wonderful, wonderful stuff. Animal communication, your
yeah,
understanding of the universe, everything. So I appreciate you. And we'll put a link to your website in the show notes for this episode so people can find you.
sounds great. Thank you so much for having me. It's been a pleasure talking with you today.